Hi, I'm George from OpticsPlanet. I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about how to buy a folding knife. You know, pretty much ever since I can remember, I carried a knife. I found small, tiny little pocket knives. I've always been kind of a knife geek. You can pretty much go into any convenience store or gas station and buy a knife. That knife is going to basically be a handle with a blade on it you probably won't know what kind of steel it is. You may pay a couple dollars for it, but if that's all you need, that's fine. If you're really looking for something that's going to become a tool and that you're going to hang on to, then you need to do a little bit of homework and a little bit of research as to the type of knife you're looking for, what your expectations are, what you want it to do for you. And that's what we're going to talk about here a little bit, is some of those considerations. And the biggest thing to consider is the type of blade and what you want it to do. The blade shape, the blade material. There's tons and tons of different materials out there today. It'll really just drive you nuts. The things to consider are, if you want a knife that's going to be used in a really, really moist environment or around water, you're going to want that with more of a rust-resistant content or makeup. On the other side, carbon steel is very prone to rust, but it also holds an edge a little bit better. It's a little easier to sharpen. So all those things come into play, and that's where your research comes into play. Let me talk a little bit about gas station knives, we'll call them, or flea market knives, versus the more expensive knives. And more expensive, I'm saying probably $20 to $25 and up, okay? As you go into the more known manufacturers of knives, there's a lot of reasons to do that. One is that's what they do. It's not some, they build their reputation on making the knife, and they usually are well tuned in on quality and quality assurance and things like that, and they want to turn out a good product. In addition to that, those manufacturers, because they're making knives, they'll also have a larger selection. So you're going to be, if you have a specific need or a specific blade shape or a particular job you want that knife to do, you'll generally be able to find that through those bigger manufacturers. And finally, that manufacturer will also be, in the event you ever need them, very, very possibly, if you have a problem with their product, they're going to stand behind it. So they're going to give you that, backing. They're going to stand behind that product, whether it's you sending the product into the manufacturer, or in many cases, a lot of today's manufacturers will do an over-the-counter exchange, no questions asked. Keep in mind that if you're going to just open an occasional envelope and things like that, you may want one type of knife. If you want it to do a little bit heavier chores, open boxes, you may need it. You might even consider needing it for a rescue situation, cutting heavier fabric or belts and things like that. It could be too that one knife may not be adequate. You may need more than one knife to do the jobs you're looking for it to do. Many cases, these knives will not just be a single blade, but they'll be multi-bladed with different shaped blades for different purposes. Based on the blade shape and what your needs are, then you start looking at the types of action that the knife will have. The knives that I was actually started on when I was young, today we call them slip joint knives. That's your standard jackknife, okay? That's a pivoted knife, and some of the old makers like Case and Western and a whole bunch of other manufacturers that do this. They are not locking blades, but they simply pivot open based on the design. They stay open. Unfortunately, if you tend to do some strenuous cutting with them, sometimes they can fold up on you. So you have to be careful. You have to know how you're using that knife. So those are slip joint knives. Many, many manufacturers. The nice thing about a slip joint knife is very often they're smaller. They fit in your pocket neatly. They don't have things hanging off of them like clips. They take up very little space, and you can get them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blades depending on what you want. You know, when I want a quick knife to throw in my pocket, that's what I'll usually do. Very often I'm known to carry more than one knife, but that's another story. Some of the other locks that are out there today, you've got one of the common ones is a liner lock. A liner lock is simply, if I can find one here for you, a liner lock, if we can see this in here, when you open the blade, there's an internal piece that interposes the back of the blade and locks it and keeps it from closing down. That would be considered a liner lock. When you're done and you want to close the knife after its use, you slide that liner back out of the way and you simply close the knife up. There's a bunch of other ones out there. Another popular one today is a frame lock. The frame lock is similar to the liner lock in that they actually use the outside of the knife body, which is the frame, as the lock mechanism. So when we open this one, you're going to see the same type of activity going on there. When that part got in behind the blade and locked it, that's actually part of the frame or part of the body of the knife, so you don't have an external scale or handle on there. It's all just part of the frame itself. So that is what we call a frame lock. One of my other favorite flippers is this one from Columbia River. I really like it. It's a modern design. It's a great knife. This is a traditional, what they call a back lock. Some of the old blades, like the Buck 110, they were back locks. And what you did is simply, when you opened the blade, it locked, and then there was a little an area in the back that you press down to release the blade, and that's what you're doing here. So this would be considered a back lock, and all that does is it locks the spine on the back of the blade. Pretty good lock. There were times when people discussed the fact that if you pressed down hard, if you were doing some real hard work, you could press down that back lock and defeat it and cause the blade to close. Again, you're using a knife, it's a tool. You've got to make sure the tool is doing the job you intended it to do. Today there's more and more locks coming out. There's safeties on locks. There's some very unusual and in some cases unorthodox ones. Some are better than others, but those are things you might want to consider. One of my biggest parameters for selecting a knife is also the handle material. If I want a pretty knife, if I'm looking for aesthetics in the knife, and I want something that looks cool, that I'm going to be, you know, if I'm going to a wedding and I want a good-looking knife in my pocket, that's one thing. On the other side of that, probably I'm going to look at the material, something like G10, which is a laminate material, which I really like a lot. G10 happens to be a wonderful product in terms of it doesn't slip, it doesn't get hot, doesn't get cold, doesn't conduct electricity, won't spark. It's got many, many attributes that I like in knife handles. However, that being my favorite, there are tons of other ones out there. You've got Zytel, you've got nylon, you've got plastic, of course, Antler and Stag, both man-made, and things like Delrin. Now this looks like it would be Antler, but it's really not. This is made out of Delrin, which is a plastic, and made to look like bone. There's also celluloid, which is another old, like a plastic, very, very old material, still very popular today. Of course, no scales or metal scales. You can have steel or aluminum scales again, but sometimes you can see this one. I love it. This one happens to be titanium, but they can get to be slippery. So, and they get cold, they can get hot, depending on what you're doing. But again, it's your choice. Another important consideration is the type of clip. If you're going to carry a knife that is not of the slip joint variety and something that you want to simply clip to your pocket, there's tons and tons of different designs out there today. Some are better than others. There are actually manufacturers out there that do nothing but design very unique and functional clips out there. The way the clip is designed will determine how the knife actually sits in your pocket, how deep. I actually tend to like a knife that sits deep in my pocket, and you can see where that bend is. That's how deep it'll actually sit inside your pocket. Whereas if you look at some of these other knives, I'm going to give you another example here. This one's not nearly as set as deep. So if I even them up, you'll see the knife on this side is going to sit much, much higher in my pocket than this one will. So those clips are very important. Here's one that's slightly angled. Some are also designed to be less wear and tear on your clothing. Some are designed better than others. You'll have to look at where the screw placement is, consider that, consider sharp edges, and just the general shape of that clip. Today, automatic knives, even though the government banned them to the average civilian, most law enforcement agencies will allow them for their personnel. Military can use them. In many cases, in order to buy an automatic knife from a retailer, you're going to need to sign some sort of a document or an affidavit. Assisted knives are the thing today. They're just wonderful because they're easy to use. They're great one-handed. If you can hold something and cut it with the other hand. They're kind of a takeoff of the old automatics, but they require a little bit more action on the part of the user. So it requires a movement by the person using it to start the blade on its way open, as opposed to just simply pressing a button. And I'll show you one, for example. This is a Gerber. As soon as I start the thumb stud moving forward, the knife opens on its own. So, and that is what is called assisted. I assisted the blade to open it. So once we do that, we start that button moving, and it gets to a certain point where the cam takes over and the spring takes over, and it opens the blade the rest of the way. Very, very nice, very handy. I like this knife a lot. There's a ton of them out there. Here's one from Columbia River. This is simply what they call their flipper. This becomes an assisted knife as well, because I take my index finger and start that flipper moving a little bit. I've just assisted the blade to open, and you saw that open almost as fast as the automatics. So these knives today are just fantastic products. They've got so many different benefits to them. They're just wonderful products to use. Once you've done your research and once you've decided on the steels, you're also going to learn which metals are going to be easier to sharpen based on the hardness and so forth. You've got Rockwell hardness on all of these knives, and that hardness will dictate how well it holds an edge, how hard it is to sharpen. Based on that, you've got a little bit of maintenance to think about as well. So not only do you have this tool that you're considering purchasing, but you've also got to consider how you're going to maintain that. In addition to that, clean the blades after you cut with it. You're going to cut an orange, you're going to peel an orange sitting at your desk one day at work, and that orange, keep in mind, is acidic. It's got acid in it. So you start doing that, it's going to ruin that blade and stain that blade. So once you make that cut, a little bit of maintenance like you would your car or your bicycle or any other piece of equipment. Doesn't take much to keep that tool nice and clean and functional for a very, very long time. One thing I didn't mention earlier, ceramic blades. Ceramic blades today are very popular. This is a ceramic blade. It may look like steel, but it's strictly ceramic. The beauty of this is it holds an edge indefinitely. It's not something you can sharpen at home. It's something that the manufacturer usually will sharpen for you for a nominal fee, or in some cases for no fee at all. Ceramic knives are wonderful. The one thing to consider about ceramic knives is they have very little flex. If you try to pry with this blade, you're probably going to snap it. So they're a fairly delicate knife, but essentially they can be as sharp as a scalpel. So this particular knife, for what it is, very, very sharp knife, but very delicate in terms of flexibility. So keep that in mind while you're shopping. As I said earlier, one knife, at least in my opinion, one knife won't be enough. You're going to need more than one. And in today's market, there's just so many different options. The blade choices, the blade shapes, the grinds, it goes on. And there's a lot of reference out there on our site. We'll even do more videos out there, so let us know if you want more information on this type of thing. We'll be happy to provide more in-depth details on knife selection, blades, grinds, heat treatment, whatever you need out there. But this is meant to be really just scratch the surface, talk briefly a little bit about some of the considerations in selecting your knives, and take a little time. If it's what you need, if it's something that's going to be a step above that flea market or gas station knife, and you want something a little better that's going to be with you a long time, and you want something that's going to do the job that you want it to do when you need it to be done, take a look at some of what's out there today. Spend that little extra time and do a little bit more homework and find the knife you want. And I guarantee there'll be something on OpticsPlanet.com that you'll find and you'll like. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.